Welcome back to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. So, as we wait for everyone to join in, let's get ourselves seated. There we go. Nick, welcome. And Z. And Clayton, welcome. So, we promised to do an interesting one tonight, and it was supposed to be last night, but unfortunately, last night I could not do it. Thank you so much for the likes there, James. Alas and alack, due to health reasons, I could not do last night. So we're doing it tonight. What do they say? Stay hydrated. Welcome to you all. It's a teeny tiny bit later than was planned, but nevertheless, here we are. And we've got an interesting one because we're doing a bit of more of a deep dive into certain hauntings to see what they are and what people have said about them specifically. And the one which we are going to be doing, which we promised to our follower, Mr. Spooky Streamer Thoughts, that we would do, is one that I have personally investigated. So maybe it will be interesting and maybe it won't. We shall see. But welcome to you all. As we get going, I am going to remind all of you that amongst other things, we have but one rule on the channel, and that is don't be rude. People who are rude get booted, banned, and blocked, because we do not like that. We have a lot of people that follow the channel from all over the world with all kinds of different beliefs. And it is truly only fair that we are respectful to everybody's opinions. That said, we absolutely do appreciate everybody that comes on, and we appreciate your opinions. And as long as you're polite about the giving of them, you are welcome to comment your opinions in any manner or form as you like. And do comment many. And along with that, remember that we do our channel based on you guys. So with that said, like, share, subscribe, send all of the gifties and good things for us to be able to keep the channel going. It's up to you guys that we are able to do this. So yeah, with that said, we've been talking about hauntings. How long have people really even believed in ghosts? And the answer is, well, practically since the beginning. It seems that the idea of ghosts per se has been something that has been believed in before even things like spirits and gods. So the belief in ghosts goes back a very, very long way, and we found in the last live that the statistics show that just about everywhere, more than half the people in any given country believe in ghosts. But what are they? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they dangerous? Well, the answer to that seems it depends greatly. They are not the same as spirits in the sense of they are a very specific kind, and you get a lot of different sorts of spirits. Ghosts are specifically something that was once living and which now has passed on in the sense of life, but has not gone. They are not the same as demons or malevolent spirits or angels or good spirits either. So we are focusing on ghosts today. So if you're interested in something spooky, stick around. Now, I have said that the beliefs in ghosts go back centuries and centuries, and in evidence thereof, we have a couple of stories to start ourselves off, at the very least, that really do go back. Many of the stories we tend to hear are more recent, but what is the oldest? Well, the oldest known ghost story was recorded by a Roman politician and writer known as Pliny the Younger. And that was in the 1st century AD. It comes from his Epistulae, or letters, which is an incredibly important piece of written history that provides a very detailed glimpse into the everyday normal lives of Roman citizens from 2,000 years ago. The letters were split into 10 separate books, the first 9 being the publications by Pliny the Younger. And our ghost story can be found in number 27 of Book 7, and was written by the Roman senator Lucius Licinius Sura. So, comes from way back when, which is really quite old. In the beginning of the letter, Pliny the Younger asks Sura, and I'm quoting, "I'm extremely desirous, therefore, to know your sentiments concerning spectres," just another name for ghosts, "whether you believe they actually exist and have their own proper shapes and a measure of divinity, or are only the false impressions of a terrified imagination." This question is interesting as it shows that the same level of skepticism that many have about ghosts back then was mirrored pretty much exactly by people's views today. So no surprise there. Pliny the Younger then follows his inquiry with his first ghost story, which he feels has swayed him into possibly believing that ghosts exist. So let us see, therefore, if it did. This is what particularly inclines me to give credit to their evidence, is a story of which I heard of Curtius Rufus when he was in low circumstances and unknown to the world. He attended a newly made governor of Africa into that province. One afternoon, as he was walking in the public portico, he was extremely daunted with the figure of a woman which appeared unto him of a size and beauty more than human. She told him she was the tutelar genius that presided over Africa, and had come to inform him of the future events of his life, that he should go back to Rome, where he should hold office and return to that province invested in the proconsular dignity, and there should die. That's a pretty fraught thing to say to anybody, I think. So yeah, an interesting start to the story. Every circumstance of this prophecy was actually accomplished. And it said further that upon arrival at Carthage, he was coming out of the ship, and the same figure accosted him upon the shore. It is certain, at least, that being seized with a fit of illness, though there were no symptoms in his case that led his attendants to despair, he instantly gave up all hope of recovery, judging, it should seem, of the truth of the future part of the prediction, by which had already been fulfilled, and of the misfortune which threatened him by the success of what he had experienced. So this is an interesting beginning, because in this, first of all, we have this figure appear who claims to be the tutelar genius presiding over Africa. The genius being the spiritual guardian, the head spiritual guardian, tutelar genius that presided over Africa, and a woman. And she appeared to this guy who told him that he would go to Rome again, where he would be made a proconsul, and he would hold this office for some time and then return invested with this rank, and there he would then die. Now, he went back to Rome at some stage, where indeed he was made a proconsul. And this is in Roman records, which is quite interesting. And thereafter he was sent back to Africa, to Carthage, to take office there, and she reappeared to him, and he was struck down by an illness, and because everything she had told him had come true thus far, he knew he would not recover, and indeed he did not. So Curtius Rufus, visited by an unearthly female spirit. Pliny the Younger sees the fulfillment of the prophecy provided by Rufus by this unknown woman as an intriguing example of how ghosts might indeed be real. The second story is told by Pliny the Younger in his letters, is not only one of the earliest recorded ghost stories, but also the earliest recorded instance of a haunted house. To this story, let me add another remarkable as the former, but attended with a circumstance of greater horror, which I will give you exactly as it was related to me. There was at Athens a large and spacious, but ill-reputed and pestilential house. In the dead of night, a noise resembling the clashing of iron was frequently heard, and if you listened more attentively, sounded like the rattling of fetters. Fetters, by the way, are chains used to bind criminals. At first it seemed at a distance, but approached nearer by degrees. Immediately afterwards a phantom, appearing in the form of an old man, extremely meagre and squalid, with a long beard and bristling hair, rattling the chains on his feet and hands. The poor inhabitants consequently passed many sleepless nights under the most dismal terrors imaginable. This, as it broke their rest, threw them into distempers, which, as their horrors of mind increased, proved in the end fatal to their lives. So it actually not only kept them awake, but terrified them to the degree that it actually unalived them, which is pretty creepy in that regard. For even in the daytime, though the spectre did not appear, yet the remembrance of it made such a strong impression on their imagination that it still seemed before their eyes, and their terror remained when the cause of it was not present. By this means the house was at last deserted, as being judged by everybody to be absolutely uninhabitable, so that it was now entirely abandoned to the ghost. However, in hopes that some tenant might be found who was ignorant of this great calamity which attended it, a bill was put up giving notice that it was either to be let or sold. Well, it does show you typical human entrepreneurial spirit in that regard, because nobody local will live in it. We'll see if somebody else will take it over. It happened that Athenodorus, the philosopher, came to Athens at this time, and reading the bill ascertained the price. The extraordinary cheapness roused his suspicions, nevertheless. When he heard the whole story, he was so far from being discouraged that he was more strongly inclined to hire it, and, in short, actually did so. When it grew towards evening, he ordered a couch to be prepared for him in the forepart of the house, and, after calling for a light together with his pen and tablets, he directed all of his people to retire within, but that his mind might not, for want of employment, be open to the vain terrors of imaginary noises and apparitions, he applied himself to writing with all of his faculties. So he kept himself awake, writing, keeping his mind busy. The first part of the night passed in usual silence, and then began the clanking of iron fetters. However, he neither lifted up his eyes nor laid down his pen, but closed his ears by concentrating his attention. The noise increased and advanced nearer, till it seemed that the door, at least in the chamber, it was. He looked around and saw the apparition exactly as it had been described to him. It stood before him, beckoning with a finger. Athenodorus made a sign with his hand that it should wait a little, and bent again to his writing, but the ghost rattling its chains over his head as he wrote. He looked around and saw it beckoning as before. Upon this he immediately took up his lamp and followed it. The ghost slowly stalked along, as if encumbered by its chains, and having turned into the courtyard of the house, suddenly vanished. Athenodorus, being thus deserted, marked the spot with a handful of grass and leaves. The next day he went to the magistrates and advised them to order that spot be dug up, and there they found bones commingled, and they intertwined with chains, for the body had mouldered away long before, lying in the ground, leaving them bare and corroded by the fetters. The bones were collected and buried at public expense, and after this the ghost was duly laid to rest, and the house haunted no more. So the account is a blueprint for every haunted house tale ever written, I should think. The family driven from the home by the ghost, the house left empty until a curious buyer comes and rents it, eventually discovering the key to freeing the spirit and rendering the house livable. Now, Pliny the Younger's tale, despite being 2,000 years old, would fit into a modern horror modern horror story with great ease. I think it would be perfectly decent for any modern story, and I think if anyone wanted to make a good movie in ancient Athens, this would definitely count. Now, the third ghost story that Pliny the Elder relays to Sura tells of two alleged witnesses that had the physical encounters with an aggressive ghost. So not one that merely wanted to be laid to rest or found, but one that was actually aggressive, which makes it even more interesting in that regard. So with that said, this story, I believe, upon the affirmation of others, I can myself affirm to others what I now relate. I have a freedman named Marcus, who has some tincture of letters. One night his younger brother, who was sleeping in the same bed as him, saw, as he thought, somebody sitting upon the couch, who put a pair of shoes to his head and actually cut off the hair from the very crown of it. When the morning came, they found the boy's crown shorn, and the hair lay scattered about the floor. After a short interval, a similar occurrence gave credit to the former. A slave boy of mine was sleeping amidst several others in their quarters, when two persons clad in white came in, as he tells the story, through the windows, cut off his hair as he lay, and withdrew the same way as they entered. Daylight revealed that the boy had indeed been shorn, and his hair was likewise spread around the room. Nothing remarkable followed, unless it was that I escaped prosecution. Prosecuted I should have been if Domitian, in whose reign these things happened, had lived longer. For an information lodged by Carus against me was found in his Scrutore. Hence it might be conjectured that, since it is customary for the accused persons to let their hair grow, that this cutting of my servant's hair was a sign that I should defeat the peril that hung over me. Now, a little bit of explanation for everybody. Basically what he's saying, the Emperor Domitian was, of course, the emperor of the time, and basically it would be a fair point to say that if the emperor accuses you of something, you're going to be found guilty one way or another. So he was basically caught. But the fact that these people in his household, one a freedman and two slaves, had their hair shorn when it was a custom that was indeed followed, that if you were accused, you could not cut your hair until you were found either guilty or innocent. It showed, the ghost showed, whatever they were doing for it, that he would get off the charge. And of course he did, because the emperor passed away before he could be accused and found guilty. And this was proved in information lodged by Carus, somebody else, who was going to accuse him, and it was found in his writing box. So because the emperor basically passed away, he got off that charge. So Pliny ends the letter with a plea to Thura to consider the three ghost stories told and to share his truthful opinion on whether or not this is acceptable proof that ghosts do exist. I beg you then to apply learning to this question. It merits your prolonged and profound consideration, and I am not myself an unworthy recipient of your abounding knowledge. And though you should, after your manner, argue on both sides, Yet I hope you will throw your weightiest reason into one scale, lest you should dismiss me in suspense and uncertainty, whereas I consult you on purpose to determine my doubts. Farewell. So Pliny himself was asking for opinions to satisfy the concerns of his own mind on the matter. And indeed, it looks as though he was quite worried of it. But what about the oldest visual record of a ghost? Can we go back even further to around 3,500 years before, to ancient Babylon, to the first known example of a person drawing a ghost? And there is indeed a clay tablet that I will make a small attempt at least to put up behind me, that you might consider the image and make your own opinion on Babylonian artwork. Just save that in there, like that, and pop him up behind me. And this is a 3,500-year-old picture that, of course, does not want to turn up. Why does it not want to turn up? Because it's being deeply annoying. Why is it being deeply annoying? We don't know. Let's have another quick try to make this do what it is supposed to do, seeing as it is, as always, dearie, dearie me. How is it we are unable to see things when we want to see things? Technology, it does you great things and thereafter stops doing great things for you. Perhaps it's haunted and it's afraid of the ghost. Save options. And we shall save it as a JPEG. Now, will it let me see it? Nope, it does not want to. For whatever strange reason, it is simply refusing to allow me. So apparently it's more haunted than you think. But essentially it is a clay tablet, which, as you can imagine, looks like the kind you would expect with cuneiform. Or was it demotic? No, it appears to be cuneiform writing. It was found way back when and interpreted by one Dr. Irvin Finkel from the British Museum. The right image of the tablet shows the ghost with a superimposed outline. There is writing at the bottom. It is a genuine ancient Babylonian tablet. It was part of a collection of tablets that had been found 60 miles south of Baghdad in Iraq and given to the British Museum in the 19th century. And it was a guide on how to exorcise a ghost, likely the ghost of a family member who was having difficulty moving on. The goal of the exorcism was to help the ghost be at peace, but it had come back to wander the earth due to loneliness in the afterlife. The tablet explained that a woman was found for the ghost, and he was brought peace through a romantic relationship. How's that for an interesting way to deal with a ghost? Through the translated cuneiform text, yes, cuneiform it was, the tablet explained that the ritual of creating figurines of a male and female and giving the male figure travel provisions and the female figure's furniture, the figures are then buried at sunrise, and the exorcist performing the ritual recites a spell, which is unfortunately incomplete on the tablet. It is a broken tablet, addressing the sun god, Samash, who was responsible for helping the dead move into the afterworld. The final line of cuneiform text reads, "Do not look behind you," but it is unknown to whom the warning is directed or how it fit in. The tablet's message has been previously misinterpreted, since the drawing is very faint and only visible with the proper lighting, as shown in the image above. Difficulty in seeing the drawings exemplified how tiny the tablet is. This particular tablet was part of a larger collection and the library of magic held in the house of either an exorcist or in a temple. It has the Guinness World Record for being the oldest depiction of a ghost. Now, but a discovery this recent shows how little we know about hauntings in the ancient world and the wealth of ghost knowledge that might still be out there, which is pretty cool. The fact that there is such a thing shows that people believed in and dealt with ghosts right the way back. Now, slightly more recent and better known, but nevertheless interesting in that regard, we have a couple of very old ones, and one of which, for those of you who are interested, is in fact a South African ghost, which is pretty cool. And what makes it very, very interesting is that it is in fact a boat. Now we know it's pretty famous, you may have heard of it, and it is none other than the Flying Dutchman, the most famous South African ghost. It's one of the most famous ghosts of all times, which is pretty cool. Endless Thoughts, hi, how are you? Are you in fine and fabulous form? I hope you are exceptionally well and are doing really, really cool. Well, I was supposed to be last night. I did not make it due to health reasons. So I thought I absolutely had to do one tonight, purely because one cannot stop doing one's lives for any length of time or you lose your followings. So absolutely it was necessary to do that. Thank you very much for the heart. I'm glad to see you here at least. I suspect that the others also think that I'm not going to be online, as by now usually Spooky has arrived and Mickey has arrived, but neither, alas, neither. But nevertheless, before we get into the main juicy topic for tonight, we're just looking at some of the most oldest ghost stories. We went through a couple by Pliny the Younger and one by Pliny the Elder, and a rather interesting cuneiform tablet with a depiction of a ghost from ancient Babylon, which goes to show therefore that ghosts have been believed in for thousands of years. So we're now going to talk about the Flying Dutchman. This is one that was told among sailors, especially during long voyages. But as with all sea stories, it's based in the truth, which is very interesting. The ship was doomed to being swallowed by the seas because the captain refused to turn back to safer waters during a very rough storm. Now we know that the storm, in fact, was off the coast of Cape Town. I came on at 10, as I always do. I was a good personage. So, absolutely, I have been on as per in all of the ways. Huge thanks for all of those likes. I do appreciate that greatly. So, the ship was doomed to being swallowed by the seas as the captain refused to turn back. Passengers and crew begged the captain to take the safer seas, and he refused yet more. He thought he would be able to take his ship through the storm, and in a foolhardy manner, he challenged God to take him, his people, and the ship down. Oh, it showed me offline. I don't know why. I was indeed online. I promise I have been online for 36 minutes and 53 seconds. So, at least that. There was a brief time for an update, which I had to wait for to finish, because you know how it goes. They update at all the right times. So he challenged God to take him, and God did. The ship went down, and now, to this day, the Flying Dutchman is seen at sea either as a light or a translucent image, and brings with it a sense of doom. And of course the moral of the story is, do not challenge God, and do not challenge the sea. Huge thanks for the finger hearts. We have reached our live goal, and we can celebrate the moment thanks to our good friend Endless Thoughts. That's pretty damn cool. I do appreciate that. Now, of course, the Flying Dutchman is one of the great South African ghosts, and they say that when the storms are truly high in Cape Town, if you look out across the bay, you may yet see the Flying Dutchman to this day. What happened to the Go Popular gift? I don't know. Let me check. I see a heart to me. I see a rose. I see a finger heart. But alas, no Go Popular. That's very sad. I don't know why. But the other three are certainly there and muchly appreciated, as is all of the likes, which definitely help the channel massively. We certainly do need them. Oh wow, 5 more. You're spoiling me, my dear. That's 50% of the target right there. Come on, the rest of you guys. Don't let poor Endless Thoughts have to do everything all on her own. She's beaten you. There you go. She has beaten you. We have reached the target for the live right there, all because of one person. Perhaps I am not entertaining enough, alas. Come on, it's free to send hearts. Smash those hearts, the rest of you. And while you're at it, make sure you follow Endless Thoughts, who absolutely has a fantastic channel, and I am a follower thereof as well. Now, in talking about famous old ghosts, the next one we are going to quickly touch on is the Brown Lady, which is one of the most famous ghost that is correct. They used the Flying Dutchman in Pirates of the Caribbean. You are completely correct. But it is a South African ghost, and it is off the coast of Cape Town. But it became so famous that, of course, they nicked the legend to add into the movies, but it's ours. So the Brown Lady is probably one of the most famous ghost photographs in existence. If you're into ghosts at all, you've probably seen this photograph. She appears in a photograph taken at Rainham Hall in Norfolk as a translucent white figure in a hooded robe on a staircase. And she's known as the Brown Lady because she is most commonly seen in a heavy brown dress. Is the ghost fish-like? No, I'm afraid they added cool stuff to the movie. The ghost is just an old Dutch sailing ship of the varieties that absolutely frequented Cape Town when the Dutch East India Company had its serious base there. And funnily enough, the Dutch East India Company is most likely the basis for the East Empire Company in the game Skyrim. There you go. How about that? Real life advising stories and games. So there you go. Now, what's interesting about the Flying Dutchman is we absolutely do know who the captain and the ship was. The Flying Dutchman was a genuine ship called the Flying Dutchman, and it absolutely went down on the coast of Cape Town, and we know the storms there are rough, so absolutely that. I must admit I do like the depictions of the ghosts in Pirates of the Caribbean. That would absolutely be what I would expect a decent maritime ghost or zombie-like creature to be like. So it certainly fits my headcanon very, very nicely. But alas, no. Now, in terms of the Brown Lady, we know who she is as well. Well, the Flying Dutchman is actually the ship, and on it, presumably, would be the ghosts of the captain, the crew, and the passengers. The Brown Lady is called that because she's generally seen in a brown dress, though not always. So there. And they think, at the very least, that the Brown Lady is Dorothy Walpole, who was married to Viscount Charles Townshend, who died in 1726 in very interesting circumstances, seen regularly around the hall, and eventually they managed to photograph her in 1936. What's interesting is that now she is seen far less frequently, which adds to the possibility that ghosts might eventually fade. As the deep emotion that makes them form fades, perhaps. Of course, it's very hard to tell. So the Brown Lady and the Flying Dutchman, one in England and one in South Africa. Ah, you have a light brown dress, but can you fade to nothingness and disappear? If you say yes, I'm going to be very worried. I am concerned. Kim Naran, what have you got to say on the matter? Nothing? So the next one is the Stanley Hotel. Now this is in Colorado, in America. And it is probably one of the most famous hauntings in America. And again, because it was the inspiration for a truly amazing story by Stephen King. Well, I very much hope, at least, that while you might bear some resemblance, that you are very much alive. I can tell you that I sympathize with you, because I do not either. It's the strangest thing, but every single member of my family, given the slightest drop of sunshine, always took on the most perfect tan, except for me. I simply boil, go red, peel, and then go back to being very pale. So as you see me here is the most tanned I have ever been in my life, ever. I just do not tan. So I sympathize with you very, very much. I even have to carry a good SPF sunscreen to protect me on extended outdoors, which is sad because I do love my outdoors and hiking and all the rest of it, but there you go. So maybe I have the ghost gene too. Now, Stephen King's story, The Shining, which absolutely has been on many, many movies and TVs world over, and is one of his best haunting stories, is based on the Stanley Hotel. Now, a few of the goings on in the hotel even appear in both the book and the film. The staff at the hotel claim to have heard music and a commotion in the ballroom in the middle of the night, even when it is completely empty. You have ghost freckles. That's cool. I must admit, growing up, I was one giant freckle, but then I grew up at the beach in Natal, so maybe they would have faded after a few weeks if I was away. I don't have freckles anymore, but back in the day, yes, I was one giant freckle. And then they would fade over time. So perhaps they will eventually fade over time for you too. I don't know. But in the Stanley Hotel, children are heard racing through the halls. Guests have seen ghostly figures watching them in their room. Room 407 is the home to Lord Dunraven, who used to own the land on which the hotel is built, and he's often blamed for any jewelry that goes missing, and unsurprisingly, a large amount of the activity occurring on the fourth floor is blamed on him. So again, a very, very interesting haunting that is said to be very real, and which has gained its fame through to popular media. Now, another one which is of great interest is one that began in 1970s, the Berini haunting, occurring at the residence of Joe and Rose Berini and their two children in New England, again in the US of A. Two children were from Rose's previous marriage, and in 1979 they were visited by the ghost of a young girl who claimed that her name was Serena. Neither Joe nor Rose knew of a Serena in their family and were puzzled by the visit, although it was not without consequence, because shortly afterwards their daughter Daisy nearly died in an operation to have her tonsils removed. These spooky visits from childish ghouls and unfortunate events in the life became more and more common, with the events accumulating in Rose levitating out of her bed, requiring 2 exorcisms before the family was left in peace. You might not know it, but exorcisms often don't work. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that the Barini haunting was indeed made into a movie, and of course the famous exorcisms scene, which was kind of added to be fair, with the levitating girl, is from this true story. So there you are. So, endless thoughts, perhaps you have ghost freckles. But if you start levitating, warn us. Now, of course, that is not the only such story. We have the Winchester Mystery House. Now, have you ever wondered why Sam and Dean Winchester are called the Winchesters? Well, their name was given to them because of this house. And for those of you who are into guns, who have heard of Winchester rifles, yes, also a connection right back there, because they invented the Winchester rifle. Now, this is one of the most famous ghost sightings, simply because of all the fact that the Winchester rifle was known to be able to have been the gun, shall we say, and it was been famous worldwide. So yeah, Endless Thoughts have a pepper G. What is a pepper G? I'd rather have a pepper steak pie. I like the idea of that. Pie is good. Now I want pie. Ah, I see whereof you speak. Well, they are, after all, the best choices, and as we know, they're about to change the law yet again about ownership of the same in this country, and it may be made entirely illegal to own them, which again is, I think, possibly one of the worst choices ever in any country, for a lot of reasons. So there you are. But the Winchesters, the house took 38 years to build. Well, it's a relatively cheap variety of pepper ball. See if you can get your hands on one and give it a go. Though I would be very careful, actually. Putting the wrong kind of pepper balls in a pop can result in extreme problems. So perhaps look it up online and find out that way. So the reason that the Winchester Mystery House took 38 years to build was that the guidance and direction of the building was done by the ghosts. Instead of using architects to help with planning and design, Sarah Winchester, grieving after the death of her husband, asked for the help of a medium. He told her that he and her daughter had died due to a curse on the family because too many people had died at the hands of the Winchester gun. Sarah then had to move, and that not only that, she had to build a house for the spirits. But she couldn't just build a house for them. If she ever stopped building, the curse would get her too. That's really cool. I like the idea of that. And of course, yes, that would be a proper ball round, which is a good one. I approve immensely. I haven't ever owned my own, but I used them fairly extensively as I was a gunner in the military. So I used quite a few varieties, and I used them for work for a while, and was obviously therefore qualified to carry. Though I think it's lapsed now as I no longer do that job. Yes, being a crime reporter can be a little dangerous. So, how did they build the house? A bell tower was added to summon and dismiss the spirits. A seance room was added to speak with them directly, as well as with her husband. It's known as a mystery house, and in fact tours are still given there due to the odd layout of the house, designed to confuse bad spirits and keep Sarah safe from the curse. Hallways double back on themselves, doorways drop down to nowhere and led to windows. Their stair posts were installed upside down, and everything in the house had 13 of it. 13 stairs, 13 pairs of panes of glass, 13 windows in the 13th bathroom. Whether she thought using the number of 13 would keep her safe from the demonic or not remains to be seen. But it is a very, very fascinating house, nevertheless. Not only that, but all the summoning of spirits reportedly means that the house is brimming with paranormal activity. Organs are said to play on their own accord. There are cold spots throughout. Voices are heard with no explanation for their origin. And there have been sightings of multiple spirits. So it just goes to show, you build them a home and they will move in. Now, one of my favorite hauntings, of course, was given a certain amount of fame through Harry Potter. The prison in Harry Potter, Azkaban, is absolutely inspired by Alcatraz, the real prison, which is on an island, and it's said to be utterly inescapable. Now, what could be more haunted than an abandoned prison on an island? People can still visit it, but there are parts that are off limits, and it is highly forbidden to go to certain places, but people sneak in and bring back with them stories of ghouls and ghosts and terrifying encounters that even follow them back to the mainland. The first hauntings were reported in 1857, when men were still being imprisoned there, and one of the most notorious stories was reported in the 1940s, when a figure dressed in clothing from the 19th century haunted cell block D, which contained an isolation cell. One inmate pleaded with the guards one night that he was being attacked by an apparition. He was screaming, crying, begging, pleading for help. And the guards thought, yeah, we put you in, you're not getting out. We'll come back in the morning. You're just trying to get out of your punishment. And he went quiet. And in the morning they went to check on him, and he had been strangled in a way that he could not have possibly done it on himself. And thereafter, he too became one of the ghosts of Alcatraz. Much thanks to Dennis Mag for the rose. Welcome, welcome to see you back. So over the years, reports of cold spots, injuries on guards and inmates at the hands of an unseen and unknown entity, howls and screams from an unseen person, and much, much more have been reported at Alcatraz, one of the spookiest spots in America. So there you go. Those are some of the oldest and greatest. But that is not why we are here. Now, we did mention that there is a difference between demons and ghosts, and that generally, at least in the Catholic Church, exorcisms are not for ghosts. They are for the demonic. We do know that in 2013, the Catholic Church announced that they were training up a whole lot of new exorcists to meet the growing demand for experts to rid people of evil spirits. And they reported an unprecedented rise in requests for exorcism because far more people are dabbling in the dark arts, especially with information found on the internet. AI Satanism, yay! Who knew it would go that way? But it has, apparently. Diabolical possessions are on the increase as a result of people subscribing to occultism, says Father Francesco Bamonte, president of the Italian-based International Association for Exorcists. The few exorcists that we have in the diocese are often not able to handle the enormous number of requests for help, he told La Repubblica, which is an Italian newspaper. In 2018, the Vatican-backed International Association of Exorcists said that the increase represented a pastoral emergency. So we have far more demonic possession. I wonder if we're having more ghosts as well. Says that it manifests itself in people talking in foreign languages that they couldn't know, shaking uncontrollably, vomiting nails and pieces of metal and shards of glass. And according to those who believe in the phenomenon, at least, they must undergo the official Catholic rite of exorcism, which involves a consecrated priest invoking the name of God, as well as various saints and the Archangel Michael, to cast out their demons using holy water, rosary, and the sign of the cross. Now, the most famous exorcist ever, who has written a couple of serious books, and I own and have read them, and let me tell you, if you ever want to give yourself nightmares, read these. Gabriel Amorth, who was born in 1925 and passed on in 2016. He was a Catholic priest and exorcist of the Diocese of Rome, who reported and performed over 160,000 exorcisms in his ministry. And he attributed the number of exorcisms performed to his opinion that people have lost the faith, and superstition, magic, Satanists, and Ouija boards have taken its place, which opens all doors to the presence of the demonic. The Catholic Church is not the only religious organization to conduct rites to rid a person of demonic possession. Virtually every religious cultural tradition has espoused the idea of spirit possession, and that is true. And the custom, as we know, has dates dated back thousands and thousands of years. So there you go. Through time, of course, exorcism has been done a lot of different ways. You will find it in Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism. In Islam, it's known as the Ruqya, and it involves reciting specific verses from the Quran to expel the demon. In Judaism, the use of specific prayers and rituals called the Baal Shem Tov. In Hinduism, the exorcism involves the use of mantras and the worship of specific deities. And in Buddhism, the use of prayer, meditation, and visualization techniques. In ancient Mesopotamia, it was believed that all sickness came from demonic possession, and Assyrian tablets make reference to the use of incantation and prayers to the gods, as well as direct challenges to the demons, which were believed to inflict every type of disease, from physical to psychological. Ancient Babylonian priests performed rituals by destroying a clay or wax figure of the demon. Accounts from ancient Persia, dating back to around 600 BC, offer evidence of exorcism with prayer and ritual and holy water by Zoroaster, who was considered to be the first magician and who founded the religion of Zoroastrianism. In Christianity, there are many references to Jesus performing exorcisms, and that the ability to cast out evil spirits is a sign of a true disciple. In one well-known story, he encountered a madman and cast the spirits out into a herd of pigs that ran off a cliff and drowned into the water below. But we also know that over time, exorcisms were not that nice sometimes. Sometimes scourging and physical pain was used to try and drive out evil spirits. In the French town of Loudun in 1632, a group of nuns at an Ursuline convent in Loudun were alleged to be possessed by demons and had convulsions, shouting, barking, and fits of laughter. The local priest, Urbain Grandier, was accused of being the cause of their possession, and he was arrested, tried, and executed for sorcery, despite his claims of innocence. According to the Devils of Loudun by Aldous Huxley, during the exorcisms, they were subjected to physical abuse, being slapped, pinched, pricked with needles. Some were forced to drink their own urine and eat excrement, the means of exorcising the demons. These practices are controversial and were strongly condemned by the church, but it shows the lengths to which people went. So in 1614, official guidelines for exorcism were established to prevent abuse and ensure that only trained clergy would perform the exorcisms. In 1399, the Vatican issued the revised rite of exorcism that emphasized the importance of distinguishing between genuine possession and other forms of illness. So there you see, not the same all over. Nevertheless, that said, we come to that part of our life where we shall talk about what we came to speak on, and that is the Kempton Park Hospital. Now, if you live in Johannesburg, you are probably aware that there is a suburb, Kempton Park, and there was a very sophisticated and very good public hospital that was very, very necessary. Now, what's very important is that there's always been a need for good medical centres. The only other serious hospital in the area is Arvape, which is a private hospital and therefore a great deal more expensive. So not having a hospital there is very, very detrimental. Now, we shall begin with the facts. The Kempton Park Hospital closed in 1996, with the staff and patients leaving abruptly, leaving a great many items behind. The building is now derelict and abandoned, and it has monthly security costs of about 5.7 million. It would cost about 1.8 million to renovate the structure, and 3.8 billion to demolish it and build a new hospital. As a new hospital is needed, it is therefore strange that they have never simply reopened it. Aha, yes you do, I recall that. Well, if you ever pass through Kempton Park at midnight, just saying. There is a associated story that allegedly might be the cause for the closure, including a fairly awful secret. And this has caused the abandoned building to become a site for paranormal investigators and thrill seekers, including me. So, yeah. But what is this story? Now, we know that the cat is playing and knocking things over because he is bad. Good time to hear something fall over during Ghost Story, ne? So, the story is that they closed the hospital due to underutilization. But we had over 4,000 people leave it, leaving personal items behind abruptly. And so people were like, yeah, we're not sure about that. This hospital has been going since 1978. So everybody called bullshit. Visitors report, and I will attest to it, that it looked as though everybody simply walked out, leaving personal belongings, medical equipment, x-rays, all kinds of files, important medical history files and everything. And of course, since then, visitors have heard and seen all kinds of paranormal stuff, they say, and we will go into it. If you take photos inside, they are often obscured with a strange sheen or glare. Various theories suggest that the sudden abandonment could be linked to a number of things. Government incompetence, corruption, mismanagement of funds, something like that, or other reasons. Now, we know the hospital has been abandoned for decades now, leading to extensive decay, true. You can go there for what they refer to as unofficial ghost tours, i.e. they bribe the security guards to let them in. The really interesting thing is that it's never had all of the quite expensive stuff in there nicked. It seems that even the homeless people know very well not to visit. So what is the story? Well, number one, Boxing Day, 1996. Staff and patients walked out. Everything was gone. And what they left behind was equipment, files, even blood-stained sheets. Sudden closures without explanation includes, the primary mystery is that they left so quick. Patient records scattered around now, like people just walked out in mid-task. Equipment, there's no official accepted explanation for why this happened and how it happened so suddenly. The statements given said that there were low patient numbers, etc., but they're not consistent because it was one of the top medical centers and the sheer number of patients that walked out was huge. There was the scandal that genuinely happened that occurred just before the closure, where a high school dropout, Andre Esterhazen, posed as a pediatrician and worked at the hospital for a full 10 years. Dozens of children under his care passed away due to misdiagnosis, wrong treatment. He was eventually convicted of culpable homicide and sentenced to 18 years in prison. Some allege that the hospital's closure was a government attempt to cover up that and other malpractice incidents, which we will speak further on, to avoid the scandal and massive compensation payouts. The continued abandonment for nearly 3 decades is attributed to government inefficiency and corruption. Millions of rands spent annually on security for an empty building, with little to no progress on promised renovation and demolition projects, shows that somebody's getting bucks for doing nothing. So certainly there is that. Now, due to the eerie nature of the abandonment, the hospital has gained a reputation, as we say, and there are several other things that were alleged to have occurred therein, including the fact that a satanic cult worshipped in the crematorium, they say. Now, I have been down and I will tell you my experience in due course. So, there is no certainty on any of this. There have been promises to revamp, rebuild, etc., etc. For a long time. It has never been done. It's absolutely a creepy spot, no matter what. I wonder if I will be able to give you a little view, because it really was an amazing. No, none of the pictures are going up, I'm afraid. It's an amazing hospital, and huge, and with lots of fascinating stuff in it. So there is no reason whatsoever not to have a hospital there. We do not know why. Now, you would think that going into an empty hospital will not be that serious. The entrance is hidden behind overgrown bushes, where you pay your entrance fee to the guards, and you park somewhere suitable, not on premises, because it's not legal to go there, of course. It's very derelict. It smells of mold. There's broken glass and nowadays flattened beer bottles and cans and God knows what else that's lurking around in there. There's plenty of fascinating photo opportunities. So yeah, there's a lot to be found. So you go in and the bottom floor has got all of the records which are strewn around now, but they're still there. And everybody that I know that ever took anything from it went back to take back what they took, because one friend of mine actually had to be exorcised because of what happened when they went. The top floor was a psych ward. In the description, but it wasn't actually. It depends which wing you go in, because there's more than one wing. So upstairs there is a maternity ward and a psych ward. And there was a chap, Andre Esterhazen, doing all of his work up there and causing the passing away of multiple children, not all of which could be proved to him. So the number given is a lot less than what probably happened. And they say on this floor you can hear children, so that you know. They also do have their own on-property crematorium adjacent to the morgue, and I can tell you that it's right down below with a tunnel under that goes to the crematorium. So you go into the morgue and then you go underground, and that alone is creepy as hell. Obviously you don't want to be seen in there, so you take small torches, which just adds to the whole creep of the whole thing. There are several floors, which is pretty cool, and you can get onto the roof, which again is, yeah, creepier than you might think. It is said in the stories that certain of the doctors belonged to experimental ideologies, and they did things to patients without the patients knowing. So besides the dodgy pediatrician, you also had a number of other ones doing highly illegal things, as well as the story that I was told that they worshipped Satan in the crematorium. So absolutely, there is a very strange vibe to the place, and even if you see nothing, you'll be suitably creeped out. I will tell you that. And there's been a lot of places that I've been to that they say, at least, are haunted, and I can tell you that I, who do believe in ghosts and have seen them, will tell you that there's bugger all there. But Kempton is a different story. It's amazing to visit it. It is really, really creepy, and you can really get lost. Now, the very first time that I ever went, where I went with two other guys, and the idea was, we had heard about it and we're like, oh, we got to go and see it. We went with the following strange stories. There's a 2.5 meter ghost that's been seen. There is a doctor that appears and disappears at the front entrance. We know that things do follow you home if you are not careful, and then will affect your house, your family, and more. There are voices reported, footsteps, the sensation of something pressing down on your legs while you sleep, lights turning on and off, and things getting worse and worse the longer you are there. Now, these are the stories. So, what was my experience? Well, I went there the first time with 2 guys, and of course there was a lot of fooling around, teasing, laughing. We parked at a shop away and snuck in. We didn't even bribe the security guards first time. We snuck in without anybody knowing. We're sneaky like that. And you walk in the front door, and as I say, there was all kinds of stuff strewn around. All the records are still there. Metal frames from beds, mattresses, all kinds of things that any hobo worth his salt would have nicked and sold very quickly, but they're untouched. Now, when I visited it, it was 2018. So by then it should have been empty, and it wasn't. We then decided, okay, first place to go is upstairs, because that's where we heard that's where you'll get something creepy. So we went up the stairs. But now, because it's got wings, you can go up the stairs in varying ways. The lifts are all in the center of the wings. We went up the outside of the wing, so we used the stairs. There are stairs on both ends, but only elevators in the middle. So we went all the way up to the top floor, which is the maternity ward, and we were walking down, and as we were walking down, we saw somebody with a torch in one of the rooms. So we're like, let's scare the hell out of them. So we went down to the room, flung open the door, jumped in and went, boo! And there was nobody in the room. It was pitch black, and there was no other door. So we're like, well, we at least scared one person. It just happens to have been ourselves. But nevertheless, we carried on, because after all, nobody's going to admit. I mean, come on, young guys, we are never going to admit to being afraid of nothing. So we then went down, and my friend was like, I am lazy, I am not walking down all of those damned stairs. So he said, okay, well, let's go to the roof. So we went up to the roof. Now, according to the story, there was a young girl in the psychiatric ward who committed suicide off the roof. Very, very angry as a person. She jumped off, and now she will try to push people off. And we were like, yeah. Now, there's no railing on the roof. You can stand right on the edge and look down. Of course, it's several stories high, so, you know. And my friend is standing there about 3 feet from the edge, and then I hear him go, okay. And he starts walking forwards to the edge and doesn't stop. And we're like, dude, what you doing? Dude, what you're doing? Dude. So I grab him by the arm and yank him back. And he looks at me and goes, what you doing? And I'm like, dude, you're about to walk off the edge of the roof. And he's like, pretty sure I wasn't. And then something pushes me really hard in the back. So I nearly go over the edge of the roof. But luckily, because I'm standing there, actually holding the arm of my friend, who's holding my arm as well. He yanks me back onto the roof, and he's like wide-eyed, and I look behind, there's nothing behind me. And he was like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, something pushed me. Well, the other guy we're with is like, yeah, we're not cool about this. So he goes downstairs. We're about to follow him, where something pushed again at me, and I could see the outline of a person in the shadows. But it's dark, our torches are off, we're up on the roof. It's just the moonlight. So I see this vague outline of somebody there. So we're like, yeah, no. This is getting a bit out of hand. So we go downstairs. It does not follow us, whatever it was. So we're like, do we think it's true? Was it really the ghost of the girl? Now, our other friend, who has always maintained that there is no such thing as a spiritual, he's a complete atheist, he doesn't believe in any of it. He was like, you guys just did that to scare me. So we're like, okay. So then we go down into the top floor, and my friend's like, I'm taking the lift down. I'm like, what do you mean? There's no power, it won't work. And he says, look, I can push the doors open. And I'm like, what do you mean you can push the doors open? And we look at the doors, and he says, come on, we'll get a stick. So he finds the stick, and he tries to jam it in the doors to prise them open, and nearly falls down. I grab him, pull him back. And we looked down and realized the doors were never closed, and there's no lift in the shaft. And he thought there was. But the problem was he saw the doors there closed, and so did I. But they were wide open and were rusted open, and the shaft was empty. So we said we'll take the stairs. So we go downstairs. Down and down and down we go. But now we're like, you know what? We've kind of had enough for now. We'll come back another time, maybe. So we bugger off home. And we head on back to our mate's place, where after a case or so, we managed to convince ourselves it was all our imagination, you know, and we were never scared anyway, really. And so left it at that, shall we say. Well, the next time I went, a couple of the girls that I worked with were like, we've always wanted to go. You've been there, you have to take us. And I'm like, well, it's a tad on the creepy side. And they're like, no, we want to go. But we don't want to go on our own as girls, so you're going to take us and be our guide. So, okay, I'll take you. So there was me, two girls, and the one girl's boyfriend, that we were there as backup. So in we went, we made payment in the proper fashion to the security, went inside, and of course we were wandering around, and the girls had brought a couple of bottles of vodka, so they were getting very well lubricated. I wasn't. I was like, yeah, I'm not drinking here. Not going to happen. They found a wheelchair, and they were pushing each other up and down the halls and having a lark. And so me and the boyfriend, we were doing more exploring. We weren't doing the drinking. So we're checking around. We go into the one room, and it turns out this is one of the operating theatres. And it's pretty cool. It's still got the table with the overhead light and everything. And we're like, damn, can you imagine? Nobody's taken any of this stuff out. It must be worth a fortune. It's just left here. And he's like, hey, look. And he flips the switch on it, and it turns on, the overhead surgery light. He says, it still works. I mean, dumb not to take it. And he says, but I thought you said that they cut power to this place, that there isn't any power. And we're like, they did. And he's like, well, very clearly they didn't, because the light's on, and we're all standing there agreeing the light's on. And then I look down by my feet, and the plug for the table is lying on the floor. It was not plugged in, but the light came on. So we turned the light off and left the room. We then decided, no, look, you can't come to this place and not visit the maternity ward. So we go up there, and as we're walking down the hall, you can hear the children laughing, running down the hall, playing with a ball, and a nurse calling at them to stop, only there's nothing there. So we're like, okay, this is a bit creepy. So we go down, and we searched around a bit. We heard some strange noises that could have been anything, so we said, no, that's just other people looking at the place. And then to our vast delight, we found a group of 5 other people who were exploring as well. So it's, you see, all those noises were from them, must have been. So we decided to go down into the morgue. So in the morgue, of course, you see probably on millions of TV programs, seen all of the morgues. So you know exactly what you are talking about. Tables in the middle of a big open room, and a huge number of I'm sorry you have to go, but thank you, and you enjoy as well. Have a wonderful evening. It's always nice to have you on board, and yeah, I'll see you again soon, I hope. And yeah, join my fan club. Endless Thoughts did. Have a wonderful, wonderful, thank you, Maria. Sleep sweet. So yeah, for you. But I'm still around, so as you know. So yeah, the tables are those dodgy ones with drainage off them for the fluids. Lots of drawers all along the walls, where obviously that's where you keep the cadavers. So we're checking around and poking in the corners, and one of the girls, who has now gone through at least half a bottle, says, no, I'm getting in. And we're like, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. So we test one of the doors, and it opens and closes very easily, no problem. She hops in, and she slides herself in. Ha, ha, ha. Then suddenly the door slams shut. And she's like, guys. So we grab the handle, but it's now locked. We can't open it. But we can't figure how it has become locked. So now we're hauling on this door. We don't know what to do. She's screaming and crying inside. We managed somehow to get the door open again, and we pull her out. And she's like, that wasn't funny. Why were you doing that? We're like, we didn't. You got in, and the door shut on its own. We're on the other side of the room looking at the tables. She wouldn't believe us, but a few more drinks of vodka and she was okay again, so we carry on. So we walk down through this underground tunnel into the crematorium. And as you go in, there is this terrifying, unearthly chill. And you just feel weird. And this was a bit much for all of us. So we're like, you know what? Now's a good time to go home. So we all went home. And I know, because the next morning, the 2 girls came into work. Because we went on a week, it was a Sunday night, I think, that we went to. But they looked haggard. I think they finished all of the bottles. So they clearly, and they never asked to go back ever again. But then, some years later, another friend of mine said, listen, I've heard so much about it, you've got to take me. You've been twice. How bad can it be? So I'm like, well, pretty bad. So we went again. And we wandered around and we saw all the sights. We did not go to the roof because I said, look, no, it's dangerous up there. So we didn't go up to the roof. We went to the maternity ward and we heard sounds but saw nothing. We then went to the psychiatric ward. We saw somebody walking down the corridor on their own and go into a room. When we went into the room, we couldn't find them. Was it a real person or a ghost? We could tell, but it certainly creeped. We then went down into the morgue again, and then we went into the crematorium again. And while we were there, it stinks down there of mold and damp and all the rest of it. And there we sat looking around, and all of a sudden you could smell smoke. And it was like this weird cloying smoke. And we looked at each other and we're like, yeah. And then you could see lights moving across the wall, like faint torch beams. They weren't very bright and they came from no one, because you're underground. So we're like, yeah, this too. And it just started, it was strange. We all started feeling afraid, but it wasn't as though something had happened and we were scared. It was as though the fear was coming in from outside and infecting us. And it was really just too much. And we were like, we're good. We're out of here. So we booked out. They dropped me at home. They went off. Apparently they got really, really, really badly drunk and forgot everything. But I went home and yeah, I was fine. And I was like, do I really need to go back and see any of that again? I think I've seen enough. So I never did go back, even though I was asked a couple of occasions to Kempton Hospital. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, because there were things there. Some of them were ghosts, but at least one or two were not. And I'm not sure what they were, but they were nasty. So that is the story, as seen by me, of Kempton Park Hospital. What do you think? Give your comment, give your opinions. Tell me what you think about it. I see you all lurking away happily in the in the live, but I never get a comment. Come on, guys. How can we interact without any interaction? Nate, Rupert, Romalelo, Kim Naran, Ashley, no comments? Do you believe? Do you disbelieve? Well, I believe, and I've seen things, but I suppose it's entirely up to you. Now, in case you're wondering, and I have said this before, I worked for the exorcist, the chief exorcist for KZN for 9 years. I was a monk during that time in the Catholic Church, and did it, as I say, in northern Zululand. And I saw a number of things that I, despite all, would be very, very, very hard-pressed to explain away. So, yeah, I've seen things. And I think that whatever might be out there, some of it's dangerous, some of it's not. But messing with it might be far less wise than you think. And that is all I have for tonight, what with nobody else commenting or anything. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Sleep well, sleep sweet, sleep deep, but sleep with one eye open. And remember, there are things out there that go bump in the night, And I do very much hope that they do not go bump for you. Good night.